I love that in the House of Stone and Light. One of my favorite songs, too, also. And
You know
welcome
what
to.
other one I like? The one where she's singing. Oh, I forget what it's called. She's singing to the south. Take me to the light. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's a good one, too.
Yeah, we could do that one another time.
Yeah.
But if you want to start now, because there should be people coming in.
Yeah, well, Duff's here and Regis is here.
Oh,
And
good. Okay. I didn't know Dub was here. Was he here the whole time? I guess so.
he came in a little while
Oh,
after
look what he
you
has
left.
there. I just love Regis. He's just the best.
Yeah, Regis was in early because there's a snow day again today because of dangerously cold temperatures. So, so yeah, here we are, and good morning, everybody. And you're here for a reading of yeah, the Ken Wapnick, not Ken Wapnick, Carol Howe book, Never Forget to Laugh, about Bill Thetford. So, greetings, everyone. And Sharon and I have been reading this for a while. And of course, anyone else is free or welcome to join in the reading as well. And I'll put it up on the screen. Hopefully, you're all going to be able to see that. Uh, yeah, come on. All right, can you see it on the screen? Um, welcoming any yay or nay. I'm expecting you are. Says I'm screen sharing, so I'm going to assume that that is true. So, and so I'm going to go, I'm going to continue reading and give Sharon a bit of a break because she's been reading this last hour as well. So let's see where we are. Okay, so we're also talking about times that Bill had gone to Denver and spent time with Carol at her family, or with her family, her children. I don't know, does she have children? Anyway, and been to the different course meetings that they had. They also went out to Tiburon, where they had course meetings. Bill was working with Jerry Jampolsky, helping him edit his very famous and beloved um, "Love Is Letting Go of Fear." So there was a lot of work going on at the time, and Bill was very involved. Bill Thetford was very involved in so many things. So. Um, so okay. So they're talking about Bill. Um, okay, I'm just going to start back here. And the next lesson in trust was about to unfold. In 1981, Bill made arrangements to have Christmas with us in Denver, and all four of us were very excited about his coming. We had planned several special treats, especially related to the seasonal celebratory music. Everything was prepared with his presence under the tree. Then the phone call. The day before his planned arrival, Jules called to say that Bill had had a serious bout of atrial fibrillation, a malfunction of the heart. We were devastated, first out of concern for his well being, and second, because we were so looking forward to including him in what would probably have been his first truly family Christmas since his own early childhood. And remember when Bill had a pretty sad childhood with having his sister has passed away, and I don't think his family was very well adjusted. So he was really looking forward to this Christmas with Carol and her family and the folks in Denver. The day before, Pat Hopkins, then a consultant with the Center for Attitudinal Healing, had gone by Bill's home after work at his request. They were becoming much better acquainted and had developed a routine of getting together at the close of her business day. He had called her earlier in the day to say he was not feeling quite up to par, a characteristic understatement, and asked if she would take him to the hospital when she finished work. His condition steadily worsened after her arrival, and she called the paramedics. They required considerable time to stabilize his acutely dangerous condition. Then they rushed him to the hospital by ambulance. No doubt Pat saved his life. She later assumed the task of handling all paperwork related to insurance, medication, and the details of recovery, which, given his basic unfamiliarity with such matters, would have been more than overwhelming to him. She was literally a godsend. Bill returned to Denver only once or twice after his near fatal collapse. Our Center for Creative Alternatives had teamed up with the High Church of Religious Science in Denver to sponsor a workshop featuring Jerry and Hugh Prather in April 1982. We had a sellout crowd, and while planning that event, Jerry and I intuitively felt we had some joint work to do. Oh, well, let me fix this real quick. I'm sorry. Folks on Pal Talk, I forgot to switch the mic. So, okay. All right, so people in Paltalk couldn't hear me at all. Okay, so 3 weeks later, I went to Tiburon and we brainstormed about the nature of possible projects. For the next 2 years, Jerry and I worked closely together in a number of areas, which entailed frequent visits to Tiburon and ongoing contact with Bill. Thus, between 1978 and 1985, I was there many times. During his first 4 years in Tiburon, Bill's life was busy, especially for a retiree, but not extraordinary. His days were not filled with particularly grand or exotic events. He worked, meditated, wrote, visited, recovered from his cardiac difficulties, helped friends, and faithfully walked. Because his daily routine sounds so ordinary, it doesn't convey the magic so many felt on being around him. Therefore, before continuing with the chronology of his earthly adventure, there are details of his major positive characteristics and their life-altering impact on others, as well as the quote-unquote demons that plagued him, all the challenges, fears, and concerns that had to be forgiven. And for all of us drawn into his energy field and who feel part of his lineage, our job is to continue our own forgiveness. The world can't wait for us to be ready. As with Bill, we can be helpful while we're still in process, and we must. The stakes are very high, and ignoring our calling could be disastrous. So that's the end of that chapter. And of course, we have all these footnotes, which I'm going to move through. And we,
Mickey said she was coming in after her group, and I think Regis or Dove could share. Are they there? Are you guys there?
yeah, they're both in the room. So yeah, if either one of them want to read or share, that'd be great.
Oh,
Uh,
I'll take it after, because I'm here. I chose it's so cold here that I don't want to do anything.
I know, me too.
I just
Uh,
want to stay in my warm under my electric blanket.
that's what I had to get is an electric blanket. I hadn't thought about that.
That is like the best thing, especially at this stage in our lives.
Yeah, because it's cold here.
Right.
I'm in this room. I don't have any heat in this room, and my window is partially open. I can't close it, and so all this cold air is coming in on me. But I just have on, I just put on extra clothes and, put a scarf on my head so keep me warm. And I also have a heating pad that's on my back. I hooked it to the back of my chair, so it's keeping me warmer. My hands are icy though. My hands are cold. Okay.
Right. Well,
So if anybody wants to share in the reading, please put your hand up, and I'll be happy to turn it over to you. Let me put up the list of participants, so I'll see if that does happen. And Mickey will be back, and then I know she has her group, and
I don't
it's
mind reading though if you want.
well, if you want to, sure.
Yeah, I mean you're doing so much anyway, so. All right, I'm just going to say I'll come in. I'm going to announce it tonight, and then on Thursday that I'm doing this book um on Thursday nights, right? Because that's your only opening you have, unless Sundays. Sundays are good too.
Well, no, Sunday I don't really have anybody. I just have Zeta on after the church
Right. You
services.
need I did want to ask you about your kids, your daughter. Did the house Everything go all right with it?
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, we went over the other day and finished fixing the plumbing stuff and the electrician when they came in, they replaced a bunch of the wiring and bunch of the stuff that had been um, just old. Was really a good thing because our local power company has a kind of an insurance that you can get from them, and if you have problem with your wiring inside of your house, they will send somebody over to look at it and to fix it. And so that's exactly what happened. The insurance policy that they had gotten. Paid for the wiring repairs, and then the plumbing. My daughter and my husband did the plumbing repairs, and my little grandson got to help out, which is, I mean, that's so good for kids. We have always been in our family very hands-on with fixing things, repairing what's broken. Um,
That's
my daughter, when
wonderful.
she was like 12 years old, my husband had her change the disc brakes on his truck. Of course, he was there watching her and helping her, but she actually did, change out the disc brakes. My son, changed the alternator. We taught them if something goes wrong, you have to be ready. But we were pretty much survivalists. Um, Especially when my kids were young, we trained them to survive because I honestly had a belief that there was going to be a major catastrophe like a world war or something of that nature, and that we would have to run to the hills and survive. I mean, there's a lot of people today, many people today, who have that mindset. But during the 60s, in 60s and 70s, that was a big deal for me for sure, was being able to be independent so that, we wouldn't have to worry about, if the government fell apart or, society went, we were ready. And
Right. I mean, that's the best way to raise them, really.
yeah,
Like I
yeah,
want to tell you, I was with my son Andrew and his son, and his wife is the same way. She has Noah, he's 2.5. He cleans up, he puts things in the trash. It makes them feel like power. It's a good way to feel power.
yeah, yeah. And it makes them responsible for their life, responsible for, what was, and so they do, they know
Right.
how to do that, and they are, my kids, my son cooks all the meals at his house. My daughter-in-law is not such a cook. She doesn't really care for it, is not really, that good at it. But my son, he cooks all the meals, I mean, all the shopping, everything, because, he grew up doing that, grew up being
Those are the
independent.
important things that kids need to learn because
Yeah,
they're learning so much that they don't need. Life skills is everything.
yeah, yeah. It's very important. And actually, my son has worked at restaurants as a cook since he was like 16, 17 years old. He went out and got jobs and worked, and he was a cook at Red Lobster. I mean, he knows how to make some stuff. So even though he is what you would call, and if you ever looked at pictures of him, I know you've seen pictures of him, he looks like
What, a
he,
hippie?
he's a manly man. He's got a shaved head and tattoos and
Right,
wears,
right.
leather jackets, and I mean he's like really you might think he was like a biker dude or something. But that's just his style. He's a metalhead. He loves heavy metal music, and but he's very definitely in fact he was able to get that job at Red Lobster when he was on probation after he was in prison. That was the thing that he had to have a job, obviously. And so they hired a lot of people who had, gotten out of prison. So that's how he got that job, and he did really well. He's just an
Oh,
amazing.
God, that, yeah, I mean, the flexibility I meant, like,
Yeah,
just to
yeah.
be able to go through prison and then have because that's a mind thing. Anyway, I do see Cindy. Cindy, do you want to read? Because Lynn and I have been reading. Does anyone want to read? Come out,
I
Lynn.
can't really, my screen's not, I'm on my phone and my screen's not big enough.
Oh, that's
Oh.
fine. That's fine.
Sorry, guys.
That's fine. I'll continue reading
All
unless
right,
you.
you'll read and then because I'm just getting things together in my house, so I'll come right back in about.
Okay,
We'll
all right.
discuss them.
So,
Okay.
part three, Never Forget to Laugh, Personal Recollections of Bill Thetford, Co-Scribe of A Course in Miracles by Carol Howe. Part three, Assets and Challenges, Chapter 15. There is no doubt Bill's external life history is fascinating, but more important, it ultimately provides entree to his inner experience. Bill was highly regarded, widely known, and included in assorted who's who lists of the academic world. As should be obvious by now, he was brilliant, erudite, painstakingly meticulous, sophisticated, dignified, and a great lover of music and theater. Those persons interviewed for this book added their assessments: gracious, courtly, a real gentleman, compassionate, and encouraging, an impeccable man. I love that. He was also reserved, non-confrontational, and rarely emotionally expressive. Catherine Prescott, a good friend, observed, Bill was an old-fashioned, almost Victorian transplant into this century. He had very formal, perfect manners and protocol. Wow. I saw him in a lot of different environments, and he never lost that really charming and debonair quality. In many ways, he was a real chameleon. I think he was many things to many people. He could be ultra witty and this is Carol again, he could be ultra witty and was a universally acknowledged master of the pun, even a double pun. And because he was so smart and sophisticated, his ability to be funny was on the leading edge of the bell curve. As with many, his humor could also be a defense, a way of deflecting a subject that got too close for comfort, a distraction from his own pain. He was courageous, having steadfastly continued with the Course in Miracles' secret unfolding in the face of potential disgrace and loss of employment. And you have to remember that. He was working at a university, a hospital. He had government grants. He had all this stuff going on. And so if they had ever discovered, this secret second life that he had of, scribing A Course in Miracles, they might have thought that, he was not fit or qualified or that he had some kind of a mental defect. They might have thought a lot of stuff about him. But fortunately, that never happened. So he definitely lucked out in that. He was able, and in so many ways, was given the opportunity to get, like have a private office in a different building, have Helen have a private office in a different building. There were lots of things that happened that put them in a position where they could, secretly be scribing this book and not be uh, caught or get in trouble for for doing this kind of stuff off hours or during work time. um, so continuing, Bill was also private, shy, deliberately compartmentalized, and secret, often keeping various relationships separate from other friends and colleagues. His ability to compartmentalize was ideal for someone who had worked for the CIA and held diverse positions at Columbia, especially for a gay man, given that our society was much less tolerant several decades ago. And that is absolutely true. Just for being gay, he could have lost his security clearance. Just for being gay, he could have lost his job. So being able to keep that secret was essential to his survival. And we don't think about that these days because it is getting to be more something that's uh, by society okay. But even as I was coming up, you know, homosexual men were not, or women were not given security clearances because they figured you were likely to be compromised. And so if you had a security clearance, they made really sure that you didn't do anything that could get yourself caught up or being blackmailed or whatever. Excuse me, it was a big deal. So, incidentally, Bill would not have discussed his sexual preference even if he had been heterosexual, considered that the class and none of them anyone's business. uh, I guess classified, none of anyone's business. He used to joke, keep your life a muddle and no one will ever know what's going on. In his reading in 1980, Leroy Zemke described a characteristic of the indigo blue color in Bill's aura. So now we're talking about someone who's seeing Bill's aura. This color, ooh, that would be so pretty. This color also indicates that you can be very secretive, that you have a way of sharing what you feel you can share. But if you choose not to share, no living person will ever draw it out of you. Period. That color indicates nobody gets through, and that is between you and God. You are not about to open yourself to the place where you're almost going to be put on an operating table to be taken apart piece by piece. This color represents your not wanting to share yourself with the world or even with close or intimate friends.
What kind of blue was it? I wonder.
He says it was indigo
Oh, okay.
blue.
Mine's turquoise, so anyway.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I don't know can you see your own aura?
No, I would. This is a psychic did a reading, and he could see auras, so he told me it was
Yeah.
turquoise with a outline of red because I was so stressed. But turquoise is supposed to be a healing color.
Yeah.
Anyway, he said I'd be a good social worker.
Oh, really? Yeah. And I think it changes. Because I can
Uh,
see auras, and I've seen them change radically in a very short period of time.
oh yeah,
So,
that makes sense.
yeah. I mean, they do change depending on, what you're thinking, what's going on. Mickey has her hand up. Go ahead, Mickey.
Hi, good morning. Thanks. I find it very curious that a scientist like Bill, because he was a scientist, would have even had somebody like Leroy Zemke reading his aura. I, that just it doesn't click in my mind. Like, how did that happen? Like I can't see him being with the woo-woo crowd.
Well, can you see him listening to Helen saying, I'm hearing a voice, and the voice is telling me to write this down?
And encouraging her no less. So yeah, it's all just this weird twist of fate that led them all to this. I can't see Helen or Bill ever even accepting the fact that this was coming through.
Oh, he sounds like he's kind of eclectic, if that's the right word.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right, but I'm tickled a little bit, especially in that day and age when this kind of stuff wasn't as widespread as it is now. Now when you talk about somebody reading auras, you don't blink an eye,
Yeah,
but back then, I think it was a little more frowned upon, especially in the scientific community. This is all, it fascinates me that any of this actually happened.
yeah, me too. But Jesus knew what he was doing.
Yep, absolutely.
He knew, he knew what was going on inside of them. And I think he thought, they were probably forward. Well, maybe not Helen, but he seems like a forward thinker, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah, he had to be to accept all of this. And I think, yeah, I think you're both right. it does seem to be unusual for a scientist to think about these things and to allow or to, be thinking that, there even is an aura. How does that scientifically work out? But that's become more accepted in society. And this was in the 80s that they're talking about this part
Oh,
here. So in the 80s, there was a lot more because in the 60s, it had been, kind of almost normalized, or, that it became something that people, thought about without being too weirded out by it.
yeah.
Um, and so, yeah, interesting. Uh, let's see, would anybody else like to read? Um, and if not, I'll continue.
Yeah, are you okay that I would, but I can't
Oh,
see
no, no,
the,
that's fine, honey. I'm just giving people opportunity if
No,
they
I'll
want
read.
to.
I'll read.
oh, okay,
I I can read.
Okay.
Sharon's back. I
Okay,
think.
where'd you stop?
Although it sounds contradictory.
Okay. Although it sounds contradictory, he was also very open, authentic, warm, friendly, casual, unassuming, gentle, kind, and as a friend mentioned earlier, intensely sincere.
Oh,
He operated from a deep sense of integrity, which partially accounts for the instantaneous sense of safety almost everyone felt around him. Regarding his challenges, Bill could be depressed, ungrounded, restless, and argumentative. He required routine in order to function effectively in many areas of life. He could also display on edge when his passive aggressive nature was aroused and was perfectly capable of analyzing another's ego, seeing what was inconsistent or unworkable. In the presence of loud or pushy people whom he had found distressing, he would back up emotionally. When upset, he would be uptight and not at all funny, not knowing much about the world outside of academia. He tended to observe life rather than fully participate in it. For the most part, I never personally experienced his downside, but to complete the picture, others' experiences and observations deserve inclusion. Almost everyone was disarmed by Bill's transparency, which was profoundly effective. One might ask how this squares with being secretive, but the answer is easy. He felt the need for privacy at the human level and to keep secret his thoughts and actions, but he couldn't hide his energetic presence. The unalterable truth of him, his loving reality, was always apparent. As part of his inclination to secrecy, he rarely expressed a strong personal opinion or commented on political issues or current events. I never heard anyone attempt a political or other controversial conversation with him. Jack Luckett shared his thoughts about Bill's sense of patriotism. He knew he was lucky to be born a white American male, but he wasn't sure about the gay part. We used to go to 4th of July celebrities in La Jolla, and when well done, he found them moving. I think sometimes he found my Gungo Marine commitment amusing, but he admired it as well. His wife, Leo, added, "You knew Bill very well and know he was not compassionate about much except opera and Mozart. I'd call him neutral regarding patriotism. Certainly, he was not a flag-waving America first kind of guy, but he appreciated being born here. Maybe he was too removed from human life in time and to concern himself with feeling superior over his choice of birthplaces. Jack concluded, Bill was as complex as a Chinese puzzle, but had a strong desire just to be normal. Now, that too is like one of the biggest things. I have a granddaughter that is 16, and when she was a little girl, I was showing her a drawing and she just started crying. I just want to be normal. So that's like in the sonship. That is a very, well, every thought in the sonship is shared by all. So when you really look at this, the normalcy of what we perceive as normal is a myth. Now, it's a myth even in human consciousness. And that's what Gabor Mate has said. He has a book called The Myth of Normal. And it's all about that. It's all about the idea that we could actually be normal as humans, where Gabor has said that it's the culture, it's the story, really, that, the opening of a new story is what's necessary for, our evolution, I think. But, here we are, we fall back on the story because it's vibrational energy. And this is always just false evidence appearing real. That's all it is. That's all we're doing all day long. And it's just the appearance. So this light is shining on all these objects. So when you look at the fact that normal is a word we use, there was never normal. First of all, we're living in an egoic mind. It isn't even us. But all of this falls away as we keep going in unity and in fellowship. Anyway, A Course in Miracles states that what we perceive in others is up to us. We can see them through the eyes of love or fear, and our perception is a choice and not a fact. That said, it is fascinating to note that almost everyone I interviewed described their experience with Bill in nearly identical terms, repeatedly emphasizing a few signature traits. These comments, for the most part, were offered by those who knew him in his post-Columbia years, and thus after he had been strongly influenced by the Course for more than a decade. ACM was working on him even while he was working on it. And what's working on all of us is just this essence, just like this life force that's just moving through the whole sonship to awaken us from this ridiculous dream, because it is ridiculous. And, up until maybe my birthday was last week, so I just made a commitment and I have been sticking with it. But when I do fall, I just laugh, So it says, what does it mean that the Course was working on him? Bill knew very well that one doesn't take the Course as one might take an algebra or chemistry class. The point is not to learn how to get one's way or acquire facts or strategy more effectively, but to unlearn our early programming. See, and that's the thing, like our thoughts were made by the ego, and pretty much they're all about, it's conceptual, but it's a lower level of the ego. The ego stretches to the higher ego, which is what we would call Holy Spirit, but it's still in form, so it would still be ego, He's saying some persons have labeled ACM a mind training course indeed. It is, and thank goodness for that. From birth, our minds are trained to believe in separation, self-absorption, and the lack, not only through our families, but through all our societal encounters, educational, political, religious, and through the media. That training, unhelpful and inaccurate, but not necessarily deliberate, to regard ourselves as smaller and less deserving or important than we really are, must change if we hope to experience any peace of mind. It's the truth. I mean, if we didn't get the Course, I don't care if you're in the last stage of awakening, because all of it is just this undoing. But why do we come back to the Course all the time? There's this familiar feeling the familiarity of the real essence of who we are. And it brings us to that. As I said in the last program, it does it slowly too, on purpose. Because, if we were whisked into light, the light that we are, it would probably freak the ego out. From birth, our minds are trained to believe in separation, self-absorption, and lack not only through our families, but through all our societal encounters, educational, political, religious, and through the media. That training, unhelpful and inaccurate, but not necessarily deliberate, to regard ourselves as smaller and less deserving or important than we really are, must change if we hope to experience any peace of mind. The consistent practice of A Course in Miracles drives long-standing limiting beliefs from our original mind, training into conscious awareness, so we can decide whether to be bound by them or not. It's as if we have been born and raised in a cult, with the ego as the tyrannical leader, requiring absolute allegiance. Since we know of no other way of being, we presume this is the only way to live. ACIM acts as a deprogrammer for our ego-directed brainwashing. And that's the way I saw the 12 steps too, because it was coming from the higher mind. Bill has never, he would always say, like, one finger pointed out there is three back at you. It's saying the same thing always. The one thing it didn't say is the unreality of it all. So I think after Bill W. had a download from Christ, he then went deeper and deeper, and I guess he also had the awakenings that Bill Thetford had. And it really is that way. Socrates famously declared that the unexamined life is not worth living. And why is that? It's not worth living because we aren't living our life. And we are life. Otherwise, we're listening to a program and we are not living our life. It's a program. Now we get breathers, but this course has done a remarkable way of relaxing my ego more and more. And I had pulled away from it for like 5 years, but it still stays because the right mind never changes. When wisdom comes into it, it is always, always staying where it is. Where the egoic, time, body that we're in, it doesn't forget any of these concepts. And that's why I guess through repetition, we keep believing the same thing. I'm not good enough. I'm bad. Everything that we're projecting. So it's interesting. Does anyone want to read? Regis, you have two of you. There's got to be one there that will read. Come out, wherever you are. And Mickey, you doing some house tours or whatever? And
I'll read.
Okay. Get out of there. Okay, you take over. Okay.
Where are we?
Go back to start up with Socrates, because she kind of stopped in the middle of that paragraph. So,
Okay. Socrates famously declared that the unexamined life is not worth living. In modern parlance, if we refuse to look at the mental emotional conditioning we originally learned for survival, we become like reactive robots, unable to make appropriate choices, basing our lives on an irrelevant past rather than living in the here and now. A Course in Miracles is a spiritual technology, celestial cleanser for the soul, cleaning our vision so we can know surely and directly we are safe. We are safe, Regis. We are safe, loved, and valuable, now and always. The introduction to the workbook states, the purpose of the workbook is to train your mind in a systematic way to a different perception of everyone and everything in the world. This will require no effort on your part. The exercises themselves meet the conditions necessary for this kind of transfer. Some of the ideas in the workbook presents you. Hang on. I didn't do that. Some of the ideas the workbook presents you will find hard to believe, and others may seem to be quite startling. This does not matter. You are merely asked to apply the ideas as you are directed to do. You are not asked to judge them at all. You are asked only to use them. It is their use that will give them meaning to you and will show you that they are true. And before we turn the page, Lynn, I just wanted to talk a little bit. You guys know I do the lesson in a little group every morning. And it has been doing that with two other people every day has been life-changing for me. And especially, it's starting the work here in Gather, and the lessons that I'm doing are really starting to gel. And I can apply all this stuff everywhere I go. Today I am determined to see things differently, and that's what this is talking about. When you start really applying the lessons in the workbook, you start seeing things differently. It's a miracle, and it all folds in together. You make a decision, and I was talking last week about all the decision making passages that I was talking about are like, you have to decide this stuff, and you can. So anyway, I just, you guys know I am very enthusiastic about the course, and it's really coming out a lot in everything that Carol is saying, that we refuse to look at the conditioning, like it says in that first paragraph. If we refuse to look at the mental emotional conditioning we originally learned for survival, we just become reactive robots. If we have to, and we have to deny. That's the use of true denial. Is saying this stuff that I was conditioned to be reactive to, I can deny it. I can say that's not true. I can say that's not true to the ego. Okay, let's turn the page and read on.
Yeah, I just before we go on to, I want to remind folks who used to listen to Glenn and Yolanda, and they had a program every Sunday evening on Awakening Together, and I'm sure you know them as well, Mickey. And
Mhm.
and they would read this at the beginning of their program, and so they would read. Some of the ideas the workbook presents you'll find hard to believe, and others may seem to be quite startling. Um, and then you would say, quite startling. This does not matter. You are merely asked to apply the ideas as you are directed to do so. You are not asked to judge them at all. You are asked only to use them.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if you remember that, but it's
Uh-huh.
always so much fun listening to Glenn and Yolanda, and so I'm sad about Glenn, but I love Yolanda, and I know that they're here for a purpose, and they were good friends of mine. So still are. I'm still good friends with Yolanda, but of course Glenn has moved on to another. Uh, all right, continue on, Mickey.
Yeah, yeah, no, and I think what you're saying is also important in that you got to keep a sense of humor. Dove always says you got to laugh because you can't take this stuff seriously. If we take this stuff or ourselves seriously, then we're sunk. Then it's all for naught. Okay, remember only this. You need not believe the ideas. You need not accept them, and you need not even welcome them. Some of them you may actively resist. None of this will matter or decrease their efficacy. But do not allow yourself to make exceptions in applying the ideas the workbook contains. And whatever your reactions to the ideas may be, use them. Nothing more than that is required. So, yeah, it's good. It's a good idea to reread that every once in a while, because otherwise we start taking this stuff too seriously, and we start making judgments, and we start deciding for ourselves what we want to practice and what we don't, and that will always get you stuck. Okay, back to Carol. Notice there's not a word about carefully learning anything, only daily practicing in the face of one's disbelief. And practice Bill did. But what was he practicing? The last section of the text, choose once again, was one of his favorites, and he took it to heart. Trials are but lessons that you failed to learn, presented once again. So where you made a faulty choice before, you now can make a better one, and thus escape all pain that what you chose before has brought to you. He was determined to notice the times when he lost his peace, times that threatened his self-image, or when things weren't unfolding as he thought they should. As swiftly as possible, he would choose to let them go, realizing he was the author of his own distress. One can almost see.
Oops.
Oops.
There we go.
One can almost see his original mindset being released and these new yet timeless values being adopted. Bill's inner life can best be explored in 3 ways. Through quotes and illustrations from members of his extended ACIM family who knew him well, through his own words, and through revealing comments made by the author of A Course in Miracles. My task is to facilitate joining these voices to reveal the most comprehensive picture possible of Bill's inner life. The reason for providing an inside view is that his inner life and ours are so alike. Even though the externals of our lives may look entirely different, the internal process of release is the same for everyone. And that's really interesting to read in light of Raffi's release technique. You know, like I constantly hear Raffi's voice in my head now saying, is it control? Is it approval? Or is it safety and security? And whenever I'm trying to deal with an emotion that's come up, I think of that. And so, yeah, even though the externals of our lives look different, we can all use that technique and release what's going on that's come up for review and to look at. So remember the observation about Bill's being as complex as a Chinese puzzle? In choosing to release his grievances, quiet his mind, and live defenselessly, and those are the 3 most important things I think the Course is trying to teach us. Release our grievances, quiet our minds, and live defenselessly. Those are the keys to this, and forgiveness, of course. Bill allowed the love that was the ground of his being and everyone's to appear effortlessly. He was letting go of the learned untruth about himself. The word Bill's friends most often used to describe him was presence. Although inadequate, it is the closest available. Something happened around him. One felt lighter, more expansive. Some expressed it as a calming and radiant quality. Others said it was like the room became electrified or filled with an exuberant energy. In any case, it was a great influence in people's lives and left an indelible mark. Semke speaks eloquently about this quality that everyone observed. So, does anyone want to say anything about what we've read before I go into Zemke's?
Yeah, that's what Jesus says. That, when you've learned this course, when you've learned to live this course, when other people see you, you will appear. I'm not sure. I can't remember the exact words, but basically, your forehead will be calmer. Your whole being will be calmer. You'll be more attractive. It actually is something that it changes you both physically and spiritually, so that people could actually see you, see the Christ in you, and that is a very attractive quality in people, for sure.
And
Uh,
also, oh, sorry,
but
keep going.
no, that's really all I was going to say.
I think that it's the effect that you have on people rather than how they view you. You have a calming effect on people who would normally explode at something, kind of sit there and think about it for a second. I think more than our appearance changing, I think it's the effect that we have on other people who are around us that changes more.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and it's exactly, but they do see you differently. And
Hmm.
that's, they, instead of seeing you as, oh, here comes that, loudmouth Lynn who's always talking about this or that, they welcome you. They're glad to see you. And it's because you're coming at them without judgment, without fear, without, it actually changes the way you relate. So it's very important and very useful.
Yeah. Yep, it is. So let's see how far this goes, because we've only got 3 minutes left. Do we want to start in on Zemke's?
No, I think I might play that song that Sharon had mentioned earlier. And
Cool.
we'll go ahead and mark this, although this book will not allow me to mark it. But then I can go ahead and get the stuff I need ready for the next group, because that's a something else. Always a little something here. Let's see, advanced computer audio and share. And I'll turn off my